salespeople, they get too caught up in the win and then get comfortable with, well, I won, so I don't need to get better. I'm doing it the right way. When you may have won, but if you can't go back and take a look at how you won, and is there something for you to do better, and then take that coaching and that feedback, right? Then you're never going to get better, because every deal has a failure.
All right, we're ready to roll. Let's go.
You were an athlete in college, right? You play hockey?
I played hockey. I didn't play necessarily in college, but played hockey. I mean, I think that I was athletic. Yeah. Still am kind of. I mean, the age is, we talked about this last week. The age.
Yeah,
is
well, I was
definitely
going to
catching
ask you
up.
about that, Mr. Athlete. So you were at Snowbird, and I was yelling at you over the phone because you had the view that I wanted, because I wasn't out there. Did you get on the slopes? Did you get out there? I mean, come on, John Hill. You were at Snowbird with epic snow conditions, and you didn't do it.
Yeah, I got some heat from our boy KP on the first day.
I'm sure you should have gotten heat from more people than that.
But when I got there, so just as perspective, I have skied for about 2 months
on Michigan hills.
Okay. The greens at Snowbird were at a higher elevation than the blacks here in Michigan.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay? And so when I saw the epicness, and to me, like, I've never seen that kind of skiing before in my life, because I've never been a skier. So I've never had the reason to actually go to a mountain like that. And Eric, there was no way in hell you were going to get me on that thing. Zero. Like, I tried. I even brought my stuff. But I looked at that and I was just like, zero chance. And
well, I'm going to protect you a little bit, because you did have a back injury that you're probably not going to talk about. But had that injury not been there, there would have been more than a zero. You brought your stuff, dude. You were preparing yourself to get out there.
I did. I was preparing myself, but I couldn't prepare myself for that. Like, that was as I was talking to one of our customers on the phone from my room, and I watched 3 people probably ruin a lot of days of their lives because of them making the decision to go to Snowbird and ski at Snowbird.
Right.
2 people, no joke, cartooned themselves into trees, where it was like, arms out, legs out, skis off, and then tree goes down and they're laying there, and it's just like, you can't help but laugh. But that was not going to be me, because that was a wrong turn. That was a wrong turn, Eric. Like, that was a wrong turn. And I'm cool with making wrong turns in life and making, and having failures, but that I could prevent, right? Like, I could make the decision to say, you know what, I'm not putting skis on, because number one, I'm colorblind, right? So you've got green, blue, and black. Nothing.
I can't imagine how much fun it would have been to go out with you. Watch you try to read these signs.
The only thing that I could think of in my head is that I'd be screaming pizza the entire way down that freaking hill, as loud as I possibly could, until I was done. And it would have only happened once, because
I'd get to the bottom and you'd be all disheveled and you'd complain about the fact that you're colorblind. But then I would say, yeah, but it was a diamond. You're not shape blind.
I don't know that they had the diamond things there. I know that all I heard was green, blue, black, double black, and all that neat stuff. And then I saw some of the videos. Like, one of our guys that was there, Patrick, lives in Utah. And he started showing me videos of some of the trails that were up on that mountain, on the other side of the mountain, and stuff like that. Yeah, dude. Wrong turn would have put me, I'd still be in Utah. I guess that would be one thing. But I'd be in traction with probably drinking out of a straw, wired shut.
Tough to do a podcast.
It's really tough to do anything.
So I'm curious, because I know you're a super competitive guy. In a situation like that, is there a little bit of you that then kicks yourself because you didn't go out there? I know for me, being competitive athletically, which I'm old now, so I'm not really competing that much athletically, but it doesn't leave your brain and it doesn't leave your emotions. Like it's still always there. That's hard. It's hard to then
Yeah,
not go out.
dude. I mean, I was fighting back and forth with the emotions of doing it or not doing it the entire time I was out there. Um, I even told my wife when I got back, like I missed an amazing opportunity to ski on something like that. However, I'm 40, I'll be 47 this year. And there's a point in your life where you start to become more realistic about your capabilities. And I'm cool with going down a blue in Michigan. Um, and I know that right now that is where I think I'm good at. And I'm good with being there. I'm more comfortable. But now 10 years ago, I would still be in Utah in a hospital with broken legs and broken bones because I would have done that.
Or
For
you'd
sure.
have shredded and you'd have been fine.
You know what? Again, looking at that hill with the minimal experience that I've had skiing, there's nothing good that would have came from that. No matter how old or how young I was, no matter how competitive I am, just listening to the stories of the people that actually went out there and how beat up they were, and how they almost made a wrong turn. I mean, and I don't have like if I'm going up there, I mean, I think you know this about me. If I'm going up there, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to push the limits of whatever I possibly can do. And I had that for the first time, I think maybe ever. I actually had a lever in my brain that shut off and said, "You're not doing this."
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I'm more proud of myself that I said no than I am disappointed in myself for saying yes.
That is incredibly mature and realistic and sad, all isn't it, all at the same time? It's because, dude, look, so it's a risk reward thing, right? You reach a point in your life where or I know, if I'm going down a black and I don't ski, I snowboard, but if I catch an edge, there's a chance that, well, forget the worst case scenario, there's a chance I can't work now for a little while. And if
Right.
I got to take care of my family, I got to take care of the people I work with. That risk reward balance starts to become this thing that almost will piss you off because this internal battle that you have with yourself. And by the way, I think it relates to everything. It relates to like the market conditions that our industry is in right now. And there's people that are frozen by fear. Some of that completely not realistic. They're frozen by fear and they're waiting for conditions to change versus doing something about it. But there is this, as we age, as we have some wisdom, as we mature a little bit, as we have assets, whether it's family or true assets like a business or a book of business, you risk that by just catching an edge at Snowbird.
And let me tell you, dude, so I've never snowboarded before in my life until again 2.5 months ago. And on the Blue Hill, and I'm sorry, on the Bunny Hill, I went up the little magic carpet ride. It's like 150 feet above sea level. You go down, you go down.
I just wanted a video of you on the magic carpet ride.
I have never fallen faster than I did the first time I snowboarded.
Those edges will eat you up.
Dude, I mean, like you're standing up and then your face is in the snow before you even realize you're falling.
That's right.
And so, that was in the back of my mind, when I went to Snowbird as well, is because, I mean, it's steep. I mean, they say it's the steepest hill or steepest mountain in all of Utah. And so you're going to fall fast and hard. And yeah, I mean, it didn't paralyze me in fear. I just knew that the risk that I was going to take, the good feeling of conquering it, was outweighed by the opportunity of me, being laid up in a hotel.
Well, here's a goal. I'm going to try to make that conference next year. And you and I are getting on the mountain together.
Well, hopefully I'll have a little bit more time on the mountains here locally.
You will.
I can get a little bit more comfortable with that, because that's where I think, to me, again, I mean, like in anything, right? Like practice gets you more comfortable, repetition, failing even more. on a smaller hill will get you more comfortable to get up on a bigger mountain. And you got to climb it, right? You got to work your way up to honestly have the opportunity to actually do that. And to me, I didn't earn the right to even put the skis on at that resort. I
I
earned the
love
right to
that.
be in the resort and participate in the conference, right? But when you take a look at the people that are coming off the mountain, I mean, these guys come from all over the world to ski that place. I mean, that's not just like, and you're in Michigan, you go up north. I mean, like a whole bunch of Michigan people are there.
Right.
These people come, I mean, there are people speaking many different languages within that resort. And yeah, I wasn't one of those.
Next year, so changing gears a little bit,
Yeah.
when you were growing up, and I think you went to a small school in Michigan, played hockey. I think you probably played lots of other sports. You're an athletic guy, competitive. What did you want to do when you thought about what John Hill was going to be doing when he was 20 years old, 22 years old?
It was always on the business, entrepreneurial, sales side.
How is that? Like, why? Did you know people? Was your pops, did he do something like that? Were there people that influenced you? Like, I didn't think that when I was in college. I'm curious why your head went there at a relatively young age.
So my dad was, he was an auto worker. He was an engineer, twisted a wrench for 35, 40 years of his life, but my uncle was in sales and he was very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the way he interacted with, people. And so that kind of drew me to that kind of a side of the success that he had by basically building relationships, because people loved him. We would go out to dinner and people would know him. They'd give him, I mean, we were an Italian family, so, there was a lot of that going around anyways. But when you saw the respect that he had earned and the love that he had from the people that he worked with and worked for, I thought that was very cool. And I had that same personality. Like my dad was, again, I got my work ethic from him, the up in the morning, late at night type of a thing, all in, don't ever give anything less than 100%. But, when it came to what I wanted to do, I wanted to engage with people. I wanted to be able to make a difference in people's lives, whatever that may be, but build relationships with people. It wasn't about the love or anything like that. I just thought that I was very enamored by the respect and the way he carried himself when it came to those situations.
Mm-hmm. And you said that's something that came actually for you when you were younger. I mean, you were a personable, kind of out in front guy anyway. You didn't, that's not something you had to learn.
No, I mean, I was always, I mean, you know me. I mean, the way I am today was the way I was when I was, 12 years old. And so right, wrong, or indifferent, I've always kept that, energy, that excitement, that passion about whatever I'm doing. And that's, I think, kind of given to me by when you think about what my dad has done, he loved what he did. It was a thankless job. It wasn't the most, prestigious job in the world, but he loved what he did. He had passion for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he always told me that when you can wake up in the morning and you can smile about what you do, then it's meaningful. But the minute that you lose that smile, then, you don't need to do it anymore and you need to change. And my dad enjoyed what he did. And so I've always I've held true to that.
I think about this a lot now, like that question I was asking you, when you were young, what did you want to do? And then, I've got a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old. And so I'm looking at things from their perspective, and they're a lot like I was. They're not the kids that are going to walk into a classroom and just make straight A's by walking in there. That's not, they like me, they had to work a lot harder than the kids making A's just to make B's and C's a lot of times. But, my oldest went to college and he's working a little bit now. But I think one of the hardest things as a parent to help, or a mentor of anybody in general, is to help them think through, picture yourself 10 years from now, 20 years from now. What are the things that you like to do that you're already maybe good at? But then there's a flip side to that too. And there's a lot of people I think we both know that are really good at what they do, and they had to learn those skills. They had to figure
Yeah.
out, my business partner, Drew, if you ever, well, you met Drew. You met Drew here recently. Drew is a hugger. Like Drew's a guy that will just, and he used to do it a little bit more, life beats you up a little bit and changes things sometimes, but he's a very loving human being and he's a hugger. And when I first met him, he hugged me like we had known each other for 20 years. And so I knew him like that for a couple of years. And one day he made a comment to me just about, you need to put yourself out there a little bit more. Like, don't be afraid to grab a hold of people. Don't be afraid to show love. And I say, man, that comes naturally for you. That doesn't come naturally for me. I've gotten a lot better at it, but it doesn't come naturally for me. And he said it didn't come naturally for him. He had a mentor that told him, this is a weakness of yours, and here's how you're going to fix it. Everybody you meet, I want you to hug them. And then it became his thing. So I think we kind of see it both ways. At what point did you get introduced to the mortgage industry? I think you were title early in your career.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of my favorite questions that I love to ask people, because none of us meant to be here. Like my daughter wants to be a neurosurgeon. My other daughter wants to be an orthodontist. So they obviously get their genes from their mother.
Somebody else, not you.
And they're good. I mean, straight A's, all that neat stuff. So they have the opportunity to do whatever the hell they want. But for me, and it's a very interesting question because again, we all came from somewhere, we all got here. And so I was working at a country club back in the early 2000s, and I had a gentleman by the name of Bernie Youngblood, who to me was probably one of the greatest mentors that I've ever had. He understood this industry and he brought me in and said, I want you to come over and sell title. I'm going to teach you how to learn how to sell title, but you're not going to sell shit until you understand what the people in the organization do and have an appreciation for the people that actually put the work in so that you can sell what they do. And so I think that was probably the best learning experience early on in my career, is to gain that appreciation for not just selling a product, but understanding what actually goes into manufacturing the product. And to this day, I take that appreciation for the people that, you take a look at Total Expert, you take a look at the companies that I've been with. I sell a product that my entire team develops, builds, and support. So yes, we have a platform. We have a great platform, but it wouldn't have gotten there if all of the hard work and all of the people within this organization, and even the people from the past, didn't put into this product. And so if you understand the inner workings of any company, I don't care where you're at, in order to sell it, you need to understand the fabric and how it was manufactured to where it is. Once you understand that, you can have and gain a true appreciation for all of the coworkers that you have. And so that guy kind of framed the way that I interact with the company, my teammates and my coworkers, but even more so understanding what you do and understanding a lot of the different aspects of this mortgage industry, because I understood and learned how to manufacture the end product, right? And I can't code, I can't develop, I understand it, right? I learned how to understand it. I've done it a little bit because one of my old CIOs taught me how to do it. I wanted to learn because I needed to understand, for me, like what actually goes into this. I'll never understand everything, but I have the empathy and I understand the work that goes into getting me to where I need to go. And that's the team. So I think that, when he brought me in, I spent 6 months underwriting and processing and calling for taxes and doing all of those little things, so that when I went into somebody's office and said, this is my name's John Hill, I'm from Title One, this is how I can help you. I actually understood what went into the end product, and I could tell them, I can articulate how we do things different. Not just saying, hey, you know what, I can give you faster turn times, or I can make it cheaper for you, or all of those things, which are all important, right? Especially back then, but it was more important on how I can solve the issues, right? And then I started learning more and more and more, because he instilled into me that if you don't understand the process, you can never sell the platform or the product. And so that was probably, and I mean, he passed away several years ago, but he's still to this day one of the my favorite people that I've ever met in this industry.
What a great story. I love that. What you just said, there's a lot to look at with what you just broke down, because I'm curious to get your opinion, but I don't think most companies are good at what you just described. And I definitely don't think most individuals are. I think from an individual perspective, especially sales, you know, you're sold numbers. If you go hit this, you can make that. If you hit these metrics, you'll be able to, you know, profit Y, like whatever. And so your motivation immediately is towards something that you might not be educated enough to even go accomplish yet, but people get thrown into it, and then they make the mistake of just selling. It's a, you know, it doesn't sound like you view yourself as a salesperson. You're a consultant, you're an advocate, but I'm guessing that's something that you see, maybe not only sometimes maybe with your own company, sort of a rush to sell, but probably with the customers that you support as well. They're trying to solve problems, and they might not be even entirely sure how they got to a place where they even have this problem. But if I go purchase this product, it's going to solve all my problems. When you and I both know, when it happens like that, we then have another problem 90 days later. I'm curious to get your take on, it's almost like a patience. Like you've shown the ability to be patient, to see the long game, where that's not, I don't see that that's a consistent thing for not only individuals, but companies in the industry that we support.
Yeah, so everybody wants gratification, instant gratification. What does that look like, right? I mean, is it money? Is it a problem that is solved? Is it, you know, the feeling of getting something new? I mean, it's always today, it's about that instant gratification. And what I've learned, I mean, there's a lot of things that can provide you instant gratification. We can talk about, you know, all of the devices that are out there. But when you take a look at, you know, in our industry anyways, like all of the technology, all of it, I mean, there is a process, but you're providing a solution. And if you don't understand the solution or the platform that you work within, then you can never solve for what that end consumer, that customer is looking to solve for, right? So you have to slow it down. You have to understand, you know, the inner workings of the company so that you understand how to get things done and where to go to escalate things. But more so, I mean, I tell this to a lot of the newer people that come into Total Expert is that you have to understand how to demo. You have to understand what the platform does. Once you do that, you can understand how it works with other platforms, especially in this industry today where there's so many different technology partners that are out there. You've got to make it work together. And if you don't understand, you know, what you do as a company, what your platform actually can deliver, you're never going to get the right solution to the right people. And so you have to slow it down. Instant gratification is great until it's not. And so it's always more, you know, I mean, again, I mean, when you think about sales, I mean, we're selling each other every day. You know, there's a lot about sales. I mean, when you meet somebody, you're selling yourself to make them buy you
Sure.
and
Right.
believe into you, right? But when it comes down to being in sales, you've got to flip that and understand that, yes, that is part of my job, but you have to understand what that actually means. And sales means a lot. There's a lot of things to get that extra, that end result in the sale. It's the relationship, it's the consultative nature, it's understanding and being empathetic, it's listening more so than you're talking. There's a lot of different things that go into that component, and none of that can be rushed. None of that can be rushed.
Do you, if you had to balance the, and I'm careful, you know, to compare it just to Total Expert, but it's the company you're with though. And, you know, whether it's the sales side or the support side, you're going to have a group of people that are consistent, predictable, always do things a specific way. And then you're going to have a group of people that are generally rushing and missing things a little bit. Do you think that consultative piece is the true differentiator when we talk about the sale of anything? I mean, because look, something I know about you And I'll tell you, there's times where I'm on calls and I'll get off of a call and I'll think to myself, I did a horrible job. I didn't create any value for that person I just spoke to, because I was jumping immediately to the solution and I didn't completely understand the problem yet. Even I still make that mistake when I know that what I like about what I do and what I've done for the last 20 years is just the conversations of identifying what's working, what's not working. Is there an introduction that I can make that can create some value for you? Or is there a solution that I can provide that can create value for you? But I'm wondering, with someone who's surrounded by more salespeople than I am, is that the differentiator? Do you notice that that's the weakness that most salespeople that don't hit their triggers, they really don't have? They're pushing too hard to sell a product versus provide a solution?
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, it depends on where you're at, right? And what you sell. But I think that for the most part, you have to listen first to understand what you're solving for. And so, and we all get into that, right? We all get, and sometimes we get over our skis and we rush the deal too fast.
Or you get excited. You think that there's something there, and so you start skipping the steps.
Exactly. And you know what? I mean, I do that. I mean, literally every single sales cycle, you always look to see if you miss something. And you know what? Even the best salespeople miss it, right? But you have to have a very good process to work within. So that's the first thing. You need to be regimented, right? And again, I'm learning, I'm working to get better at what I do every single day by asking questions, learning from my salespeople, from our sales team, and our leaders, right? Because we have fantastic people in our organization that are willing to coach you and make sure that you level up. But it's also a lot of times salespeople, they get too caught up in the win and then get comfortable with, well, I won, so I don't need to get better. I'm doing it the right way. When you may have won, but if you can't go back and take a look at how you won, and is there something for you to do better, and then take that coaching and that feedback, right? Then you're never going to get better, because every deal has a failure. If you look back at the entire sales cycle, every deal you failed at one point or another, and you had to pivot, to change, to do something to make up for that failure, right? There's never a deal, there's never a sales process, especially in this industry, that's going to be perfect. But it's, you can't not want to learn from the mistakes to grow as a salesperson, or, in anything, right? You have to be able to take the feedback. And some of it might not be fun. You might
Yeah.
not want to hear some of the feedback. But know that, when you get that feedback, you have to take action on that, right? Because again, I mean, you're never going to grow if you don't have it. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree that salespeople do, we do tend to leave the consultant and do too much sales. Even when you've already won the deal, you continue to sell, continue to sell, continue to sell. Just stop
Right.
and move to the next step.
What are there, can you think of any stories of failure that stand out for you that was a lesson, like you think back to from time to time? Like I'm sometimes I reconvince myself of this, because I agree with you. There is no success without failure. It doesn't, if you have that athlete's mentality, you start to view failure a little bit differently. And honestly, from a software perspective, there's some incredible similarities. I remember when we first were getting ready to roll out Model Match for the first time, Drew and I, who came from helping companies strategically grow and identify their value proposition and communicate that value proposition to other opportunities that maybe they want to partner with. It was people like Kirk and Thomas, who's in the background on this call, that said to us, we're going to roll it out. You go break it. How do we know what to fix until we know what might be broken? To their point was, they don't think anything is broken. We've done our research. We're rolling something out to market that is, at least a most viable product, right? But let's go break it. Well, sports is the same way, and sales is the same way. But do you have any failures that stand out, where someone called you out or something happened that you can pull back or think back on?
I mean, there's a lot. And the cool thing about that is that I know there's a lot, right? I mean, like you can't be caught up in the whole, I don't do anything wrong because I'm the number one sales guy, or I can't do anything wrong because I'm at this level. I'm a C-suite guy, or an SVP or whatever, right? I fail every day. And we all do, but we have to be willing to understand that we do, and we have to recognize that. So, every deal that pushes, or every deal that, we don't win, every time you're on a call and there's an issue that you can't there's a lot of different failures. I don't think that there's any one that stands out to me, because, you have the opportunity to take that failure into a learning moment, and you turn it into a win. So I think, honestly, the whole year of 2021 was a failure.
Mhm.
We had a lot of challenges. And, it was probably the worst year of my professional career. The entire year.
Yeah.
The entire year was a failure. It was literally a dumpster fire. But I remember, at the end of that year, I looked at, my team here, and I looked them in the eyes, and I said, number one, that will never happen again. You've got John Hill with the biggest chip on his shoulder. And I doubled down on myself, and I brought my team members in, and I took and went out and got coaching and all of that, because I didn't know how or why I failed, but I needed to uncover what I can do and be better at. And so, I flipped the script on that and had one of the best years of my career in 2022. But that's not, you can't do it alone. I'm fortunate, and not everybody is as fortunate to have great leaders in your organization that actually care, in the growth of who you are, and are willing to, give that coaching. I don't need to be babied. Like, I need direct. I don't need somebody that's going to be like, okay, it's going to be okay. I need someone to point at me and tell me, you sucked at this, and this is how you're going to get better. And I'm fortunate, again. I work with some of the best people that I've ever worked with in my career, and they actually care. Our chief sales officer, Eileen Vogt, she's gotten more out of me than I ever thought I could get out of me. Joe Wellew comes up and challenges, me, and along with everybody here every single day, because he cares. Right. And so you when you're in the right organization that actually wants people to be better, for the benefit of obviously the logo, but for themselves, you have those people to look at. So yeah, I would say, if you want to take a look at one, let's just call out the entire year of 2021.
Yeah. I had one
that's the most glaring.
I had one that I think about that happened in the last year with someone that we both know, but I'll leave their name out of it for now. Enterprise client of our platform, and we were on a call with leadership, so regional leadership, corporate leadership, and I don't remember exactly what the gap was, but the executive that was leading the call realized that they had been making a mistake in how they were managing processes inside of the model match tech platform. Now, look, we both know there's best practices, but how a user chooses to adopt and utilize a solution, it's going to be a little different from person to person. And so you can't always jam it down their throat. This is how you have to use the system. We did that early on when we rolled out Model Match, and it was a train wreck. You can't tell people how to use the tech. And so I provided options, but I wasn't really specific about my opinion. And so this company made some mistakes, and the mistakes became a problem. And this executive on the call called me out and said, why would you let me make that mistake, in front of his whole team? And he was right. He was right. It was a reminder for me, kind of like what you just said. There's a solution, but when you have people behind that solution, the users of that solution have expectations of the people that they trust, right? I needed you to tell me, hey, I think that's a mistake. That's not the route that I would go. And then let me make the mistake. But to not say anything, to just throw out these options and then let me go make the mistake when you knew that it was probably a mistake. Why did you let that happen? And I'm so glad he did it, because, man, there's plenty of people that you do business with that those things will happen, and they won't call you out. They won't tell you. And so you don't know you don't know why you missed that opportunity or why it fell through the cracks. With where the industry sits right now, and just, you know, the overall economy and the headwinds that do exist, even though we both know that that's going to start to relate to some tailwinds at some point, because it's just the way that it works. What are some of the things? I mean, you're such an incredibly connected guy with executives of mortgage institutions, financial institutions. What are some things that you're seeing right now that are intriguing to you? Like, are there any interesting things that you see companies doing that makes you think, boy, this is going to be pretty cool over the next 3 to 5 years?
I mean, there's a lot of things that people are doing. Some people are doing that. I mean, everybody's trying something right now. I think the innovation and the outside of the box thinking is kind of been put on pause. I think
For budget reasons.
I mean, Housing Wire just reported that in Q4, the average IMB lost $2,800 a loan.
I saw that.
Right, cute doesn't happen right now, right? But what is interesting is if you think about what Rocket Mortgage is built, right? They leverage data better than anybody in this industry to drive the next deal, to drive retention, to do all of those things. And there is a shift now where these lenders are starting to adopt that policy and that practice. Because on our side, on the IMB side, if you're not Rocket, you're looking at 23% retention. Those are real numbers. That's a problem, right? You can't get, you know, how many different mortgage companies have you used since you've been buying houses?
A different one every time.
Right. I have too. I mean, I have loyalties to 150,000 different loan officers, 270 different companies, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, I just like, you know, whoever calls me and says, hey, I'm going to do this for you, then we'll do that, right? It doesn't really bother me. But for the average consumer, they're doing that same thing, right? And that is, it costs you so much money to get that first deal. Why not spend just a little bit more to make sure they come back to you? Why not be a little bit more relevant? And so we've learned, and I love hearing from different people in the industry about how they hate Rocket Mortgage and how, you know, Rocket Mortgage sucks and Quicken Loan sucks and all of those things. But they've given us almost every piece of tech, all the framework of all of the tech that we literally can't live without today. The POS, all of the data, automation, all of that. Like, they've done that and they've built that for the last 20 years. So there is a shift now to understand that we need customer intelligence. We need that automation to drive and help make our loan officers more efficient so they can go out and grab the purchases, because that right there is staying power, right? Like the purchase, I mean, Garth Graham, you know, I read something the other day about how when people steal data and people steal information from other people and don't give them credit for, I do have a big problem with that, by the way. As well, because sometimes I come up with a nugget and I don't want people to chase. So you got to give credit to where people are due. But Garth Graham and I've seen this present. I mean, I could probably give Garth's presentation, but the powerful piece is that the purchase transaction, the percentage of purchase and the number of purchase in the United States every year over year has pretty much remained flat, right? Keep your loan officers in that bucket, and then make sure that those purchases come back for refis when it matters, because that's how you're going to retain loan officers. Give them the opportunity when it's relevant to serve those opportunities up to those loan officers while they're managing, maintaining, and building relationships with realtors and buyers out there to make sure that they're still there when shit hits the fan. Right? When things go down, you've got to have a purchase base. When things go up, well, now the platforms and the products are in place to give these loan officers, to give these lenders retention power, which at the end of the day makes everybody money. But if you give those realtors time to focus on building the relationship that they need to, and then you add all of that on top, well, then you have a strong organization, which is why Rocket hasn't gone down much.
Right. Flip side of that, and maybe it's the same topic. what brings you the most frustration that you noticed companies aren't doing? You know, there's a lot of companies struggling right now where the things they haven't been doing over the last 3 to 5 years are now coming back to haunt them at some level. What stands out for you?
Doing nothing, right? The definition of insanity used to be doing the same thing over and over again to get a different result. But as we start entering into this new wave of market conditions, and we've been there for a while, doing the same thing and expecting the same result is even worse.
Mm-hmm.
They have to start changing. They have be, I mean, I've been saying this for the last year. If you don't start leveraging your data in a different way, have data strategy, orchestrate your technology and your data into one spot to drive automation, outcome, activity, action, you're going to work for somebody who does. I don't care if you're the owner of that company. I don't care if you're a loan officer. If you're not doing it and you don't have a strategy to get to that in the next 12 months, it's not going to matter. It's going to be too late when it's the most relevant. You'll be working for somebody who does. So that's what I say. I mean, like, you have to change. You have to take a look at things differently today, right? You have to look at retention. You have to look at data. You have to be able to drive different responses to power your loan officers, not replace loan officers. That's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest misnomer in this industry, is that people think they're going to replace LOs. You're not. People still need education. First-time home buyers want to talk to somebody.
Right.
We missed that in the first wave of get push button, get mortgage, right? We thought that there were people out there that were just going to interact online and do anything. But the problem is that when people raise their hands, people need to know about it. People need to have experts and advice, and leveraging different platforms to drive education. You got, different platforms that are out there that we could talk about, but you have to be that person. You have to become an advisor at some point in that relationship, especially on the first-time home buyers, the Gen Zs, the Gen Xs, because they have questions. They are uncomfortable with a transaction like this. So it's not about just replacing loan officers, enhancing their ability to create amazing experiences for every single person they touch. And it's not just a borrower, it's a realtor, it's an attorney, it's their ops teams, right? Like, that's what technology needs to be starting to get to in 2023 and 2024. If you're not doing that, and you're not thinking about that, you will be absolved. You'll be selling, you'll be, taken over, or you'll lose, and your loan officer will work for a company that does. And that's
I think it's an interesting point that you make, because I think a lot of, especially in a market like the one that we're in right now, where the perception, and certainly to some level the reality, is that consolidation is happening because there is a weak company economically. They're not positioned well. That's now rolling up, converting, being merged or acquired into a stronger company. And we only think about the dollars, the economics. But to your point, there's a technology component that's creating efficiencies for that stronger company. That's not, to your point, doesn't exist to replace the originator. It exists to create efficiencies in the process to put the originator in a better position to do some of the things that you just described. But the further that you fall behind, the harder it then is to go make that investment finally in your tech stack that's going to help you create those efficiencies. There's small ways to do it, but there's always going to be a segment in a tough market that's hanging on for dear life, and it isn't able to do the things that create those efficiencies. Before we break, because I want to be sensitive to your time, before we break, what haven't we talked about that you want to talk about?
I mean, I don't know, dude. I think we've covered off on a lot, but I think I want to know from you, like, how did you get into this industry? Like, why are you here now? Why are you supporting this crazy? And
started with a conversation. Started with a conversation. It didn't start with the drip marketing campaign. Put it that way. It started with a conversation. Quick story. So I was an athlete in high school. I got hurt. I was still a wannabe athlete, so I was trying to get back to be able to play at the college level. Didn't happen. Didn't work out for me. Sort of coasted through college, not because it was easy, but I just had no plan. I just got a degree, had no plan, no idea what I wanted to do. Was in the sport and fitness industry for a while, loved it, and then moved to Western North Carolina with my wife and didn't want to do that anymore. And was literally, 25 years old, no legit job, no assets, no savings. My wife deserves so much better. To this day, I look at her, I'm like, I still don't understand what it was you were doing back then. But we went to dinner. She wanted me to get introduced to people in Western North Carolina of her hometown that she knew. And we went to dinner with a guy, and his dad owned a recruiting company, and I didn't even know what the heck that meant. And I met with him, and I was like, let's go give it a shot. What I loved about it was that I could control my effort actually mattered. Like I knew that my effort, what I put into it, would directly relate to what I got out of it. And that did work. But what never stopped for me, which is something that I saw was different with other recruiters, was that the next deal is not what I was always chasing. I was chasing efficiencies. I was chasing relationships. I was chasing the trusted people that saw me as an advisor and vice versa, where I sort of had this ecosystem like a purchase market. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about? It's like chasing the purchase business versus the low-lying fruit. And it was the relationships that got me stoked about it. We made it through 2008. I started my own thing just before 2008 or during the debacle, and got introduced to Drew, my current business partner. And then every year we were just a handful of guys, man, but we would sit down and act like a much bigger company. We'd sit in front of the whiteboard multiple times a year and say, who do we want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And one of the things that popped up was, why is there not an LOS for recruiting? Why is there not a tech platform that will track a relationship from pre-qual prospecting? You don't know this person yet. There's not a deal, all the way through clear to close and ultimately funding and servicing, which is retention, right? And so we built the idea in our head, basically storyboarded it, and then brought in people much smarter than us, like Kirk and Thomas, to help turn this idea into a reality. So, and then, man, probably like you blink your eye and 20 years went by.
Dude, it's crazy. And the one thing that you keyed on was the relationship, right? You had a conversation, and that's the one thing that is so impactful in this industry. Because again, when you asked me the question of how did I get here, right? That's the question that I lead with everybody that I meet new, because it's so fascinating. Right. And you can learn a lot from somebody when they start telling you how they got to the mortgage industry. A lot of people were in car sales or, insurance sales, or, KP was selling like mattresses or some stuff like that down in Florida.
I didn't know that. And thank you for that visual.
I don't know that it was mattresses. It was something. It was something. It was something off. But but we all got here, and that conversation, and you take a look at 20 years later, if I were to tell you that I would have the contacts and the relationships with the people that I have today, I would tell you you're stupid. And so that is the biggest, I don't know, I mean, that's what wakes me up every morning, is I get to go to work, for what I perceive and believe with my whole heart, that is the best company to work for in all of financial services, including mortgage. But I get to go to work with my friends. I get to go to work, and I get to go to conferences, and I get to see you and KP and, all of the people, David. I mean, you could go down a list of 1,000 people, right? And we're all here for the same thing. We're all here for the same thing. And it's fun to be a part of something that we all didn't mean to be a part of, but we're here and we love it so much. That's the excitement that I get when I get up on stage and I see people, when I listen to people that are on stage. I mean, if you would ever tell me that, guys like David Stevens and Bob Brokesmith and Christy Furco would actually give me 5 seconds of their time, I'd start laughing at you. I get a chance to do that. If I get to work for, honestly, probably one of the best minds in all of tech, and Joe Wellew. You want to talk about someone who I believe is probably one of the smartest people I've ever worked with and for. I wouldn't have had that opportunity if didn't talk to people and build relationships. So I think the relationship, when you think about sales, when you think about consulting, when you think about being in any industry, the relationships do 100% matter, and you have to focus on that first. before you make any asks, because once you have that relationship, the asks are so much easier. And I'm totally, the last couple deals that I closed personally, took a while, a year, sometimes a year and a half, but all the while understanding who they are as a person, as a company, getting deeper and wider with the relationship that they have within the organization, and all of those types of things that matters. And that's the fun part of my job. I mean, getting paid to do what I do. You can delete this, but the money does matter, but it doesn't, because I absolutely love working with the people in this industry, and it's always something different every day.
Well,
So
that's a killer way to close this out. Look, I will say that I mean, look, you're a killer dude. You're fun to hang out with. You're full of education that you've picked up from other people, which I know that's what you would say. But you're also a heck of a connector. I mean, there's people that I have relationships with today that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for you. And you have a bit of a knack for just grabbing two people, putting them together, and then literally walking away, just knowing that there's something there. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. And I think a lot of what you shared is really important always, because there's always going to be something very old school about this industry. Anything where someone is acquiring something through a trusted relationship, you're not going to replace that entirely with AI or robotics or whatever. And it's something you're killer at, man. I'm glad that I don't know how many years ago it was, maybe 3 or 4, when I came off the stage at a deal in San Diego and you grabbed me and said, hey, we got to do something together. And I was real skeptical because of some things that were going on at the time. And I'm grateful that I had that conversation with you. And I'm grateful for you coming on the podcast. This might not be the last time we do this.
yeah, no, likewise. And you know what, I'll just say one last thing is that, when you have the ability to have, and you work hard to have the relationships and the connections that, we have, if you're not willing to share those, then what's the point, right? Everybody in this industry starts from somewhere. And if you understand and are willing to take time to communicate and listen, at those moments where, Eric's walking by as I'm having a conversation, and just like, you remember that they had said, what, I need something for recruiting or something, whatever that may be, and say, hey, what, you guys need to talk. I'm going to go and do that. I don't need to be a part of that. Right. I'm letting you do you, and you, because you're going to sell yourself to this person. Like, I can try to, right, but you put that work in, right? And so I think that that's one of the things that, when you take a look at, the people that are the most connected in this industry, they don't hide their connections. They don't hide the opportunities from one another. Because the more you give to people, the more you'll get back. And it may not be, right away. It may be, it's a long-term type of a thing, whatever. But I love seeing people be successful. I've done a lot in this industry, and I'll continue to do so for the next, I'll probably die at a conference at some point.
I put my money on that.
But no, but seriously, I think the one of the most rewarding things that I get to do, internally and externally, is just be able to share, who I know, and provide opportunities for the people that I, that we have the relationships with in this industry. And I think that the people that, if you're thinking about, if you're just new into this industry, or you're getting your feet wet, whatever that may be that person, because there's always going to be someone that's going to be new. And I personally think that, it's our responsibility to leave this industry better than the way we found it. And it's kind of, connecting people, and growing relationships and building relationships, providing opportunities for the people that, that deserve it and that want it.
I love it. Let's end there, except for one more thing. Get your skis on, get your snowboard on. A year from almost right now, you and me and Snowbird.
Or you can come up to Michigan. We can play on the little hills up here.
I'll do that,
too,
but that's
right?
too easy. Come on, man. We got to throw some risk in it. Hey, John Hill, total expert, all around killer guy. Thanks for coming on the walk, my friend.
Eric, it's been a pleasure, dude.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
See you, man.
See you, bud.